Hello everyone, this is FM Arne Jochens from chessuniversity.com, and this is the third video in our series on Endgame Art. For an introduction to this series, you can refer to the video titled Endgame Art number 1. And also in that first video of this series you will find an explanation of the concept of Zugzwang in chess. So if you are not familiar with this term or this concept of Zugzwang, I would recommend that you watch the first video in this series first, because Zugzwang will be very important in today's study as well. So the study we have here is one by Dr. Moritz Levitt, who was a German physician, chess master, author, and of course a study composer. And also he was the longtime president of the oldest German chess club, the Berliner Schachgesellschaft. This study was published in 1933 in a Swiss chess magazine, and it is white to move and win in this position. So obviously you can probably guess that the main fight will be between this pawn, which is trying to promote, and the black bishop. But it may be the case that the black bishop can still stop this pawn, and then the question becomes, what about the pawns here on the queen side? So if you want to have a go at solving this for yourself, please feel free to pause the video. It's white to move and win from this position. Okay, so how do we solve this? Well, the first move is pretty clear because black has a threat in this position. Black is threatening to play bishop d4 when the pawn would be stopped, and the black king could then easily handle the other pawns so that we would have a draw. So first of all, white must prevent this move bishop d4, and that's why the first move has to be king e4. And now white is threatening to simply advance the pawn and promote. So black has to stop this, and obviously only the bishop can stop this. And the bishop cannot come to d4 anymore, so he has to find another way, and the only way is bishop d8. So black is trying to stop the pawn in this way. Okay, and at this point it gets difficult, because here the most straightforward try does in fact not win, but let us see why. So I would say the most straightforward try at this point is to play king e5. This is a very logical move, because we are preventing bishop f6, and at the same time we are keeping an eye on this d4 square, so that we are also preventing the bishop from returning to b6 and stopping the pawn in this way. So king e5 looks very good, but black will still find a way to stop this pawn. He can play bishop g5. We have to advance the pawn, otherwise he just captures. And now he can play bishop to c1. Okay, so now you can see if we queen, we would get skewered on the long diagonal. Black could take on b2 with check and then capture our queen. So we cannot queen, and the black bishop will stop the pawn. But still, the result is not clear yet, because we can still try to support the b5 pawn with our king. We can play king to d6, threatening to promote, so black has to take on b2. And now we can support our pawn with king to c6. So this is still interesting. Now black has to be careful, because we are threatening to advance this pawn, and the bishop cannot stop both pawns at once, because one of the pawns could sacrifice itself and then the other one could promote. So black has to make sure that he gets his king in front of our b pawn. And the only way to do this is to play bishop e5 first. This is very precise. So that after b6, black can play king to a6, and this is the position that black had anticipated. Because now if white plays b7, black can play king a7, and the bishop is well placed, preventing white from playing king c7. if white could play king c7 and king to c8, then he would be winning, because then he could sacrifice the b pawn and then promote the h pawn. But with the bishop on e5, white cannot play king c7. So this means already one move earlier. This means that in this position with white to move, it is just a draw. In fact, white is in Zugzwang in this position. If you think about it, he cannot move the king without losing the pawn. Or, okay, he could move the king to c5, but then of course black could just play king b7 with a dead draw. So white cannot move the king, and also we have just seen what happens after b7. This is also a draw. So remember this position. In this position white is in Zugzwang. But also many positions in which one side is in Zugzwang turn out to be mutual Zugzwang positions. So it's always a good idea to think about this. Even if it is white to move in this position, how would be the evaluation if it were black to move in this position? And if you do this, you will see that black to move would also be in Zugzwang here, because the bishop is perfectly placed, as we have seen, preventing king c7. And of course it must also stop h8 queens. So e5 is the only square where the bishop can do both of these. And the black king is also ideally placed, because whenever white plays b7, black has to be able to respond with king a7. So this means black would be in Zugzwang. So now we have to go all the way back and try to find a way to reach this position with black to move. So how can we do this? If we go all the way back to the position after black's first move. In the line we just saw, we played king e5 here. But this led to the mutual Zugzwang position with white to move, which is not what we want. So how can we lose a tempo? And the answer is, the only way to do this is to play the very surprising move b6 in this position. Okay, first of all, black cannot take this pawn, because if the bishop takes, then we can just promote the h pawn. He cannot stop the h pawn anymore. So that's easy. Okay, but what if after b6 the king takes? Well, then the king is in the way of the bishop. Then the bishop cannot come back to b6 and to d4 anymore. So this means now to prevent bishop f6, we can not only play king e5, but we can also play king f5, preventing bishop f6, and bishop to d4 in this way is also prevented by the black king. But of course with the king on f5, also the other way to stop the pawn, where the bishop has to go to g5 on the first move to be able to capture on b2, as we have seen, does also not work anymore. So this means white is winning. He can just promote the pawn. Okay, so after b6, black cannot take the pawn. Also we are threatening to advance, so black's only move is to play king a6. And this is where the real difference shows now. Now we are playing as in the line we have already seen, king e5. Again, black has to stop the pawn in the only possible way, bishop g5, h7, bishop c1. Again, we cannot queen because black would have a skewer on b2. So now we support the pawn, king d6, bishop takes b2. And this is where we now can be clever and lose the tempo to reach the Zugzwang position with black to move. Instead of playing king c6 here, remember in the other line we played king c6, and in that line we had to play king c6 because our pawn was still on b5, so we had to support the pawn. But here we do not need to play king c6, we can play king to c7 first. And in this way we lose the tempo, because now we are threatening to play b7, and then king c8 if necessary, and one of the pawns would promote. So black has to check, and now we go to c6. So look what we've done here. We have come to c6 not directly, but via c7. That's why we have lost the tempo. And now you can see we have reached the mutual Zugzwang position with black to move. So white is winning. For example, if black plays bishop d4, we can advance, forcing king a7, and then king c7, bishop e5 check, king c8. And white is winning because whatever black does, we can promote one of the pawns. And even if we can still capture one, we can promote the other one and win. Okay, so I think this was a very nice example of a mutual Zugzwang position, and also I think this is very useful for practical play, because these mutual Zugzwang positions are very common in practical endgames. And of course this endgame is very practical and very typical in a way, this fight between a bishop and passed pawns. So if you try to develop a sense for these Zugzwang positions and anticipate them and then find a way to reach them with the right side to move, then you will significantly increase your strength in the endgame. Okay, so if you found this video useful, then please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel. Of course, you can check out our other content and programs on chessuniversity.com. And also, if you have any comments, you can just leave them below this video. Thank you everybody for watching, and goodbye.